Hey, it's Camila Stevenson, and around here we talk wealth. And today I want to clear up a misunderstanding about XRP. You see, there's some people that are not wrong about XRP. They're just using the wrong mental category to understand it. They're asking trading questions about something that was never designed to behave like a trade. And when you misclassify an asset, every conclusion that follows is going to feel confusing. So instead of arguing about price or timing or when it finally moves, I want to show you why people keep misunderstanding what XRP actually is and why that misunderstanding is the real reason so many people feel stuck or impatient right now. Now, before we start, this is not financial advice. This is education and perspective so you can think more clearly about what you're watching on the charts. And if you like this kind of breakdown that helps you see things more clearly, go ahead and hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and drop a comment below. I'm curious, do you think about XRP more like a trade or more like a long-term system asset? Now, one of the biggest mistakes that people make in markets is evaluating things with the wrong framework. We do this all the time in life. You wouldn't evaluate a highway the same way you evaluate a coffee shop. You wouldn't judge a power grid the same way you judge a startup. And you wouldn't assess financial infrastructure the same way you assess a speculative asset. But that's exactly what's happening with XRP. Most people are trying to understand it using tools that were never meant for what it actually does. So before we talk about price or future potential or adoption, we have to fix the category error first, because once the category changes, the way everything else makes sense changes with it. Now, here is the category error most people are making, and it is the core issue. XRP keeps getting evaluated as if it's a stock or a growth asset or something that you buy hoping management decisions push the price higher. But XRP isn't a claim on a company. Owning XRP doesn't mean that you own Ripple, you're entitled to profits, you benefit from quarterly earnings, or that the asset's value depend on corporate performance. Ripple could have a great year or a completely terrible year, and XRP would still exist. That alone tells you it belongs in a different category. XRP is not an equity. It's not a business. It's not ownership. It is a functional asset. Its value isn't derived from revenue. It's derived from what it enables inside a system. And that's where most people lose the thread, because systems don't care about narratives. They care about speed, reliability, capacity, and what happens when volume increases. That's how infrastructure is evaluated. So when someone asks, why hasn't the price moved yet? I keep saying what they really are asking is a consumer question and something that was built to solve system level problems. And until that distinction clicks, XRP will continue to feel confusing, not because it doesn't make sense, but because it's being looked at through the wrong lens. Now, once you fix the category, the next thing to understand is how systems define value. Retail tends to think about value in terms of price movement. That's why we're seeing so much frustration. And the frustration continues as the price go down. But I want you to understand how institutions think about value in terms of capability. They're not asking, can this go up 20% this quarter? What they're asking instead is, can this move value when volume spikes? Can it settle without friction? Can it operate when other rails are stressed? And does it reduce uncertainty or add to it? That is the lens. Large financial systems don't break because an asset gets volatile. They break because money stops moving efficiently. And this includes settlement slowing down, liquidity fragments, counterparty risk starts to increase, and suddenly things that worked fine yesterday don't work at scale today. That's when value gets redefined. Assets that reduce friction becomes more valuable, and assets that introduce delay become liabilities. This is why infrastructure doesn't reprice the same way consumer assets do. It doesn't move because of excitement. It moves because of necessity. And necessity doesn't announce itself. It shows up in how systems are built, tested, and integrated. And might I add, this is also why price is often the last thing to change, because before price moves, you're actually going to see access being created, rails being tested, legal questions being resolved, and integration happening behind the scenes. It's always behind the scenes, y'all. And those changes don't trend on social media, and they don't show up as these big green candles that make you feel excited. But they do matter more than the headlines, because once a system starts depending on an asset, the question isn't about it being interesting or not. It becomes, what happens if this isn't available? And that's when behavior changes. And that's when positioning replaces speculation. And that's also when repricing becomes structural instead of emotional. And honestly, this is where a lot of people are getting frustrated, because they're trying to evaluate system level changes with short-term tools. And if you've never studied how markets, liquidity, and infrastructure actually works, this can all feel counterintuitive. It feels slow, and it feels disconnected from price, and it feels like you're missing something, when in reality, you're just looking at it from the wrong altitude. Now, everything we're talking about, system design, liquidity, certainty, market behavior, this is not the kind of understanding that most people get from headlines or social media. It comes from learning how markets actually function. And that's why I'm constantly telling you to invest in Stock Up University. It's not all about the hype and all the signals. It's about building real market literacy and understanding cycles, reading structure, managing risk, and thinking at a higher level about money and markets. I'm a big believer in learning the why behind the movements, not just reacting to them. So if you want that kind of foundation, there's a link in the description. Use my code before you sign up. All right, now I want to pull this all together in a way that really makes sense. When people talk about regulation or adoption, they usually imagine some perfect moment in the future where every rule is finalized, everything is crystal clear, and then finally things move. And that's not how real systems behave. Real systems don't wait for perfection. They move forward with certainty. When conditions are calm, certainty doesn't feel as urgent. You can afford to be patient. You can afford to optimize for costs, and you can afford inefficiency. But the moment stress enters the system, the priority changes. When something has to work, price stops being the deciding factor. The question becomes, what works reliably, what removes uncertainty, and what gets the job done without risk of failure? And the moment those questions take over, value gets reassessed immediately, not emotionally or speculatively, but structurally. This is why certain things can be repriced very quickly when the environment changes. And it's not because people suddenly believe in them, but it's because the system needs them. And that's the part people misunderstand when they ask, can XRP really be repriced? The answer isn't that it will. The answer is that it can under the right conditions. And here's the most important distinction. XRP does not need an emergency to succeed long term. The future is still the future either way, but emergencies are the kind of environments that accelerate repricing, not create value out of thin air. They expose which assets are optional and which ones are necessary. If a system suddenly needs speed, finality, deep liquidity, and legal usability, and there are only a few tools that can provide that, those tools don't stay priced like conveniences. They get repriced based on necessity and not hype. And this is why I'm careful with language here. I'm not talking about predictions. I'm not talking about timelines. I'm not talking about guarantees. I'm talking about eligibility. XRP is eligible to matter when certainty becomes the priority. And once you understand that, the conversation totally changes. And the question is not ringing in your head about, again, why isn't this price going to the moon? But it's about what happens if the system suddenly needs what this asset was built to do. Now, as you understand that, I want to talk about the last mistake that people make with XRP. And this isn't about how they see it, it's how they plan around it. Most people build a game plan based on what they think the asset is. If you think XRP is a trade, your game plan will be buy here, sell there, try to time it, hope you don't miss it. There's nothing wrong with trading. Let me just say that. But if that's the wrong category for the asset, then even a well-executed plan leads to the wrong outcome. Here's what most people are not realizing. Your game plan always aligns with your understanding of the end result. If you don't understand what something is ultimately designed to become, you can't reverse engineer the right strategy. And that's why education matters so much here. Once you understand XRP as a system asset, not a flip, the game plan changes. Now it's not just about selling, it's about optionality. It's about what one asset can eventually enable, using it as collateral, earning yield, borrowing against it, rotating it into cash flow businesses, diversifying without exiting, creating multiple income streams from a single base. That's a completely different wealth framework. So instead of wondering, okay, when am I supposed to sell? You start wondering, how do I use this intelligently over time? See, that's how institutions are thinking about this. That's how long-term wealth gets built. And that's why I spend so much time educating around this. Because if you can see the end picture clearly, you can work backwards and build a game plan that actually serves you. But if the end picture is wrong, even disciplined action won't get you where you want to go. This isn't about telling anyone what to do, but it is about helping people understand what they're holding. And when understanding changes, behavior changes. And that's how trajectories shift. That's how people stop reacting and start positioning. And that's how wealth gets built intentionally instead of accidentally. Now, if this video helped you to see things more clearly, then that tells me something, that you're not here for hype. You're here for understanding. And if you want to go deeper, not just learning concepts, but actually building a real wealth strategy that fits your life, how to think about assets, how to position long-term, and how to create optionality instead of stress, that's exactly what my membership does. Inside, we walk through strategy, positioning, mindset, and execution in real time. It's structured, it's intentional, and it's built for people who want to move forward with clarity instead of reacting to the noise. I'm upgrading everything going into the new year, more depth, more structure, more support, and the price will be increasing as that rolls out. So if you've been thinking about joining, this is the window. The link is in the description. And if this conversation resonated with you, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel so you can stay connected. And as always, stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.